Welcome to this Payments Unpacked podcast. Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by Vaughan Colley from Accord. Before Vaughan introduces himself, I wanted to pitch this podcast to you because today we're going to be taking a very timely look at one of the most important payment transitions for 2025. And if you haven't guessed it already, that transition is Swift's adoption of ISO 20022 and the November 2025 implementation deadline. So, if you didn't already know, Swift have adopted ISO 20022 as an open global standard for their financial messages. ISO 20022 provides consistent, rich, structured data that can be used for every kind of financial business transaction. And it bridging the gap between old and new formats started with an ISO 20022 coexistence period right back in March 23. And it comes to a culmination when it ends its migration path in November 2025. And of course, in the wider Swift community, major infrastructures such as Target, the Bank of England's with CHAPS and MEPS in Singapore have already moved over to ISO 20022 for message processing. So with such a transformational undertaking right at the core of Swift and the clock ticking towards its November deadline, you can see why I'm so pleased to be joined by Vaughan Colley from Accord this morning. Now, Vaughan, we've known each other for a number of years. We've talked about so many payment topics over the years. And here we meet again on the topic of ISO standard. So for the benefit of today's audience who've not had the privilege of meeting you before, can you just give me a quick intro into yourself and who Accord are?
Yes, great to speak with you again, Mike, and thanks for having me. I'm a managing director at Accord. We're a global consultancy that specializes in all things payments. We deliver all facets of payments consultancy, from strategic all the way through to detailed execution, implementation, and this is all across the entire payments value chain. We lead with deep subject matter expertise and IP, and our clients range from some of the largest global enterprises all the way through to fintech startups, scale-ups, and anything in between. On a personal note, I started my career in tech many years ago, specializing in payments across all channels, and I now focus on helping clients bridge the gap between business and technology in the payments ecosystem.
Fantastic. That's a bit about the organisation and you. And I think with that introduction done, let's jump into the topic of Swift's ISO transition. A lot of us would have heard about ISO 20022, maybe even heard of other ISO standards. We might have heard about the Bank of England adopting the standard for the CHAPS system. Maybe in the context of conferences and podcasts, we've heard about Swift adopting ISO 20022. But there's a particular focus for our conversation today. And my first question for you, Vaughan, this morning is, what's the issue here? Why is ISO 20022 and a November Swift deadline important for banks to explore further? I guess the heart of my question is, why might it be an issue, not just a deadline for November?
Yeah, as most will know in the payments ecosystem, at its heart, Swift is a global payments ecosystem that enables, amongst other things, cross-border payments integration and, importantly, interoperability. ISO 20022 is, at its heart, a very data-rich payment messaging construct, and Swift is modernizing its legacy messaging constructs with its drive to ISO 20022. So that's the crux of it. November effectively completes this move for both inbound and outbound cross-border payments, and not being fully compliant with this messaging construct will bring many real challenges to in-scope organizations. These challenges could include payments processing, operational, regulatory reporting, and technical challenges, all of which are likely to impact not only the bank and in-scope organizations, but their clients and correspondent relationships as well. So taken together, these could all add up to a material commercial and financial impact. It's also important to note that it's not just about November 2025. There's another key deadline in November 2026, and some important interim milestones in between and beyond that. So it's very clear to see that this is a constantly evolving ecosystem.
Okay, thanks for that sort of that positioning, and you've sort of conveyed a level of urgency around dates. And clearly, if we're talking about dates, there's a thing called compliance. Am I going to get there? Will I get there in time? And somebody listening to this might be thinking, well, I sit within my organisation. I've heard about this ISO piece. Maybe I've got some responsibilities in the area. How would you suggest to somebody that how they might go about identifying if their organisation might have a challenge? I don't know. Are there some questions or an approach that you might suggest just to aid people in their thinking?
As we found with loads of transformation programs, projects, there's always varying states of readiness throughout the initiative. And this is no different. And we found organizations are, again, currently in various stages of readiness. For example, those that have a well thought out migration program and are well on their way to achieving their deadline, they're in a good place. Then those that have a good plan but are struggling to deliver the plan due to differing priorities, lack of resources, and so forth. But then we also have those that believe they have a solid plan and also believe they're on track, but belatedly find that they've missed material items of scope. And that's not an uncommon occurrence that we found over the last few months, especially. Another common occurrence is those that have done the work but do not have the right test scope, coverage, and quality of testing, and therefore miss crucial defects. And this undermines the overall success of the entire delivery. And then we have those that are in complete denial. And of course, you have flavors of the above, various combinations. But ironically, those that know they have a problem are the easiest to support if they reach out for help. It's organizations that aren't fully aware yet that they have a challenge and that they do actually need help. Those are the ones that are quite challenging in this type of initiative. The easiest way, of course, to address this is to seek an independent external assurance check. We've got an incredibly talented and highly experienced team of experts, specifically in the ISO 20022 domain. And therefore, we're able to deliver these assurance checks extremely quickly, considering all parts of the program and scope across operational, technology, testing, compliance, and more. And at the very least, this type of review will provide peace of mind. It can also very rapidly identify gaps in delivery risk versus the November deadline, especially where these might previously not have been obvious due to the complexity of this type of initiative and the large number of organizational stakeholder groups that it spans.
Interesting as you've gone into compliance and what an organisation might want to do to get itself into a point where it understands and is confident in its approach. You know, sometimes we look at these changes that are required on an infrastructure level, and sometimes we're doing it because we have to. The infrastructure tells us. Sometimes the regulator wants us to do things. Maybe the system operator makes a change, like we've seen in CHAPS. As we expand just to thinking a little bit around ISO 20022, is this just a mandatory thing, a mandatory infrastructure change, or is there an opportunity here that people should be exploring?
Absolutely, there are clear strategic benefits. The leading organizations recognize the strategic benefit very early on and have realized that focusing only on compliance is potentially a high impact short-term distraction with a long-term adverse impact, especially in relation to things like innovation, competitive advantage. As an example, there are a number of strategic benefits that can help drive competitive advantage through, for example, enabling more sophisticated regulatory and reporting compliance. That's top of everyone's agenda nowadays as well, given the pressure from various regulators. There's also really rich transaction data sets that enable a superior level of service to customers. And that richer data set can also materially reduce operational and financial impacts, especially in respect of exceptions processing, which we all know in the payments ecosystem, it can be quite tough. And all of this taken together provides a more holistic ecosystem in which you're able to manage ever-increasing risk and fraud, especially in today's AI arms race, which bad actors are embracing and leveraging with unsurprising enthusiasm, innovation, and efficacy, and creating challenges never before seen.
So thank you for that little bit around opportunity. You may have whetted people's appetite around opportunity. You might have worried them a little bit around compliance and dates and November and things like that. So if somebody's listened to this podcast, they're thinking about ISO 20022, they're thinking about what it means for their firm, but equally where their firm might be on that journey. How can somebody react internally within their firm and without creating lots of extra panic or extra work? Yeah, how might they try and work out whether they've got a compliance gap?
The key point is, if you adopt a pragmatic, effective approach, there's still plenty of time to successfully meet the deadline. The most effective approach is to objectively take stock of where you're at in your migration journey and then plan and recalibrate accordingly to ensure a successful delivery. In my opinion, an independent review is most likely to not only deliver on this objective view very rapidly, but also open up options for deep expert support to work alongside your teams to deliver a successful outcome.
Okay, well, hopefully we've encouraged a bit of enthusiasm and whetting appetite around opportunity, but then some views on, okay, without panicking, what do I need to do? What could I do? Vaughan, thank you so much for your contribution to this podcast today. We have reached the end of our time together. We do appreciate you helping us unpack the opportunities, the challenges and the adoption urgency for ISO 20022 within Swift. The standard question, Vaughan, for an end of a podcast: if something you have said has resonated with somebody, how can people make contact with you?
Yes, my email address will be in the notes below. It's vaughan.colley@acort.com. As I said, in the notes below. Do feel free to reach out.
Okay, so if something's resonated with you that Vaughan has shared this morning, drop him a mail and I'm sure he'll pick up with you and try and help you navigate this particular migration piece. So thank you, Vaughan, again. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. And while you're at it, please subscribe to Payments Unpacked newsletter at payments-unpacked.com. Thank you.